Excellent. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's online event, Uncovering the Legacy of Anna Forbes-Irvine, organised by the Scottish Society for Art History in partnership with the National Trust for Scotland. Tonight we will celebrate the life and work of Anna Forbes-Irvine, a remarkable but underappreciated artist with ties to Aberdeenshire. This event will feature a short video tour of the exhibition Anna Forbes-Irvine, Light and Shadow at Drum Castle, followed by a brief presentation touching on the research that went into making this exhibition and a Q&A session also. So I'd like to introduce our guest speakers for this evening, Caitlin Jamison and Marianne Fossaluzza. Caitlin is a museum professional with an academic background in art history and an MLITS in museum studies from the University of Aberdeen. She's worked in museums and heritage institutions in Germany, Australia and United Kingdom, and she currently works for the National Trust for Scotland and is undertaking a part-time secondment to Montrose Museum in a collections management role. Marianne is a heritage professional, co-founder of the video and animation studio Fine Lines, and a PhD candidate at the University of Aberdeen. She holds a bachelor's and master's degree from the École du Louvre and is currently researching the photographic collection of Edward Atkinson Hornell. She's been with the National Trust for Scotland for 7 years in various roles and now aims to combine her heritage expertise with creative media through Fine Lines. Welcome, Caitlin and Marianne. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Claire. I hope everyone can hear me okay. So hello and welcome everyone to this talk about Anna Forbes-Irvine. I am absolutely delighted to be giving this talk alongside my wonderful colleague Caitlin, who poured a lot of work and dedication into making this project happen. So yay, Caitlin. Before anything, we are very aware that it can be quite tricky to hold a remote tour of an exhibition. So instead, we decided to record a video for that purpose. It will take you through not only the exhibition room, but also other areas of Drum Castle where Anna Irvine's presence can be felt. So I hope you will enjoy it. And Caitlin, take it away.
Drum Castle is one of the many beautiful castles of Aberdeenshire. Nested at the top of a small hill west of Aberdeen, it started as a small tower, half of the size of the current one, and is one of the oldest recorded tower houses, built around 1286. In 1323, Robert the Bruce granted it to William de Irwin by royal charter, and it became the home of the Irvine family for the next 650 years. The castle kept growing through the ages, with additions being made in the 14th and 15th centuries, a grand Jacobean mansion house in the 17th century, and a final extension in the Victorian era. It is in the drawing room of this castle, above a masterfully carved mantelpiece, that hangs the portrait of a lady in a striking white dress. Anna Forbes-Irvine.
Anna was born in 1828 to Jonathan Leslie of Rothy Norman and Margaret Urquhart. She joined the Irvine family in 1848 at just 20 years old, after marrying Alexander Forbes-Irvine, the 20th Laird of Drum. As the daughter of a landed family, she was educated as appropriate to a young lady of her status. Reading, writing, some arithmetic and religious education was standard, but as the assigned role of a 19th century lady were homemaker and hostess, there would also have been domestic and entertaining skills.
Needlework was a skill women were expected to have, and Anna was no exception. Drum Castle retains several examples of her ability with the needle, including samplers, which were a showcase of technical achievements. Daughters of well-to-do families tended to receive education in the home, with private tutors. The subjects they studied were chosen by their parents and would generally include musical education. Sometimes visual arts would be covered too, although women were confined to watercolors and domestic subjects.
In art education, women were at a stark disadvantage compared with men. There were few institutions accepting women as students, and even when they did, the numbers were low. Once enrolled, female students were not given the same opportunities as their male counterparts. women were banned from all life drawing classes for reasons of appropriateness until 1893, and even after that, they could only study a partially draped model. Anna didn't attend art school, but her father shared her interest for art and architecture, allowing her to nurture this passion.
It might even be this shared interest that allowed Anna to develop a keen sense of architectural drawing. Many Aberdeenshire castles appear under her brush and pencil, such as Drum Castle, Crathis Castle, Leith Hall, or Fyvie Castle. It is in these sketches that her technical skill shines through. The perspective is accurate, even when dealing with complex spaces like the grand spiral staircase of Fyvie Castle. The shapes and volumes are carefully worked in light and shadow, their relationship and placement organized to create a harmonious composition. It comes as no surprise that Drum Castle and its estate were some of her most frequently recurring themes. The castle appears from many angles, from the roof to the woods, and in many different formats. This painting of Drum Castle, one of Anna's largest works, represents it from the east in an idyllic country scene. Her work on the contrasts of light and shadow, as well as the warm palette and restrained use of color, evokes a peaceful summer afternoon. Yet, the accents of orange and yellow leaves are a reminder that colder days are right around the corner. In this work, the drum tower is only seen in the background, leaving the spotlight to the tall Scots pine rising in the foreground. It is set against a beautifully executed moody sky, and at its feet, small flicked brushstrokes evoke the dappled light of the undergrowth.
Anna favoured architectural studies and landscapes over the more feminine studies of domestic life. This was a bold choice for the time, as women's art was often unfavourably compared to that of male artists. The serious art of oil and history painting were reserved for men, considered to be better artists overall. This bias was firmly ingrained in institutions too. President of the Royal Scottish Academy, Sir William Fettes Douglas, once said that women's works were like a man's, but weaker and poorer. This bias also meant it was harder for women to have their work exhibited or receive professional recognition or accolades. Anna is a rare exception, as not only did she manage to have her works exhibited, but her technical skills were so well regarded in professional architectural circles that she was credited by name in the seminal book by McGibbon and Ross, The Castellated and Domestic Architecture of Scotland.
It is in this letter from her son, sent in 1870, that a casual comment led to the discovery that Anna did indeed exhibit some work. It is a pity, however, that they are hung so high, writes Francis Hugh Irvine, meaning that it would be more difficult to see and impossible to observe up close. Thanks to these exchanges between mother and son, it is now confirmed that Anna exhibited both at the Royal Scottish Academy and at the Aberdeen Artists' Society. The letters also reveal that her paintings were quite as favourably mentioned as any, and that she even managed to sell artworks.
That Anna was able to exhibit and sell is quite a feat in the society of the time, yet unfortunately her legacy will remain partially obscured as she rarely signed her work. This was a common practice for women, perhaps to avoid the prejudice attached to being a female artist.
While reconstituting her entire oeuvre might prove difficult, the works kept in Drum Castle still give a good overview of her accomplishments. It shows an artist with considerable technical skill, comfortable not only in architectural drawing, but also in crafting evocative landscapes with bold colors and brushstrokes. Some of her works are quite progressive and could even be said to have an impressionist manner about them. While her works are most often devoid of human figures, which seems to have been her artist's weakness, they almost always bear traces of human presence and have an expressive, peaceful, and poetic quality.
People might have been absent in Anna Forbes-Irvine's paintings and artwork in contrast to her life filled with friends and family. She was not only an artist but also a very active member of society, a patron of the arts, and a loving mother. She often received people at Drum, as we know from her neatly kept guest book where she recorded who came to the castle. She was a mother to 3 sons, with 2 unfortunately dying quite young at 6 and 24 years old. But the letters with her youngest son, Francis Hugh, show a loving and close relationship. She also left her mark on the castle itself, along with her husband.
Together, they spent £14,000 to improve the Drum estate, building an extension to the castle in the late 19th century, including a new entrance, a gallery, and a grand wooden staircase. They also restored the family chapel in memorial to their first son. It is in this newly renovated chapel that Anna had the 15th century canopy of the 4th Laird's tomb placed after she rescued it in 1875 from St. Nicholas' Kirkyard, where it had been discarded by the minister. And it is also her that had the silver statue of the Ascending Virgin Mary imported from Augsburg, Germany in the 1890s. Anna Forbes-Irvine was an admirable woman, juggling the roles of mother and head of the household that were expected of her, whilst at the same time overcoming societal obstacles to learn, practice and exhibit her art. Drum Castle is proud to be holding the first exhibition dedicated solely to her life and work.
So that's the video. That's our little virtual tour out the way. I'm going to do a short presentation now with some images, a little bit of behind the scenes of the exhibition. So I'll just dive straight in. I've got some slides to share. Again, please yell out if you can't see what I'm sharing. So good evening. Thank you all for joining us for this talk about art, exhibitions, and most importantly, Anna Irvine's artistic legacy. As my colleague Marianne mentioned, my name's Caitlin. I'm the person who put together this exhibition. It was about a year ago that this process began to try and put together a small exhibition of artworks and objects to help tell the story of Anna Margareta Forbes-Irvine, and through her explore the wider and enduring struggle for recognition for female artists. So why did I take all the time and effort to curate an exhibition in the first place? Curation is, strictly speaking, not really in my job description. I work at Drum Castle for the National Trust for Scotland in collections care. Basically, I work to conserve and promote the longevity of the artworks, objects, and historic interiors of the 700-year-old castle I work in. But, as anyone who works in heritage will know, you are often required to wear many hats over the course of a typical working day. I also care for the historic archives at Drum Castle, some 150,000 documents spanning everything from personal letters to estate accounts and business documents, the oldest being the 14th century Charter of Drum, which will go on display for the first time next year, thanks largely to the fundraising efforts of volunteers and National Trust members groups. Also in my remit is the library of 4,000 books encompassing religious text from the early modern period right through to the 20th century with satirical magazines. It is the history and stories drawn from this unique collection of artworks, objects, archives, and books that has allowed me to, for the first time, tease out the life and legacy of Anna Irvine. Wintertime at the castle is my favourite time of year. The tour buses and cruise ships have departed, and the frequent crackle of a radio with a colleague requesting cover at the front desk has also gone quiet. Whilst I love being able to share my work with the public as they are chaperoned around the castle by our excellent guides,
it is also immensely satisfying to simply walk into a room, pick up an object, and get started. As part of the research for this exhibition, I was going around examining paintings for evidence of signatures, opening furniture with ancient keys, and comparing views from around the estate with watercolours in Anna Irvine's sketchbook. We have a modern, temporary exhibition space in the former housekeeper's apartment, located on the second floor of the castle. Sometimes we host external exhibitions by local artists and often work with Aberdeen-based print studio Peacock. In 2024, as it happened, only one room out of 5 was slated for use as an exhibition space, and I saw my chance to curate an original exhibition that's site-specific that would both enhance the visitor experience for those first-time visitors to Drum Castle and offer something new for both locals and repeat visitors. Feedback from guides has often been that whilst people enjoy the contemporary exhibitions in the gallery space, they would love to see something related to the castle or to the Irvine family. It can be easy to see curation and conservation as opposites of one another. Curation is about sharing artworks and objects, and conservation is about protecting them. That being said, working at a site far removed from the Trust's head office in Edinburgh, and being the only person on site whose remit is anything collections related, I was well placed to find the balance between access and preservation to tell this important story. I always say that art history is my first love, academically and professionally speaking. I actually began my university career by studying architecture, but found I didn't really have the flair for computer-aided design. What I did love, however, were the 2 hours a week we spent on the history of architecture and the cultural and artistic movements that shape it. I can certainly understand Anna Irvine's fascination with the magnificent castles and stately homes that dot the Scottish countryside. I went on to complete a double degree in art history and French studies before completing my master's degree in museum studies some years later. Museum and heritage work is constantly changing, and gone are the days where you could land a curator job and that was that the next 30 years of your career. I'm sure many of my trust colleagues will echo the sentiment that whilst their role may not reflect exactly what is in their job description, this can open up new and exciting avenues to get hands-on with history. Before the idea for an exhibition had even begun to take place, several dedicated volunteers and I were slowly and diligently working through Drum Castle's archive. And Aileen came across a bundle of papers, the majority of which were addressed to Mama. At this point, I will note that whilst the archives are in a vague chronological order, there appears to be no rhyme or reason as to what gets put where. One packet may contain estate vouchers and a letter to a tenant about an errant hog, and the next one might be a tender and personal letter from an Irvine daughter to a cousin living abroad. Basically, we just dive in week after week, unless there is a particular pressing research request, either from a colleague or a university student. Coming back to the bundle of papers, as we delve further into their contents, we discovered a school report card from the prestigious boarding school Winchester, where unfortunately the child in question was coming second last in his class, and a letter in pictograms signed off by Fishy, which you can see the two right-hand pictures or left, depending on where you're sitting. It turned out all these letters were collected and kept safe by the wife of the 20th Laird, Anna Irvine. Up until now, she has always been referred to simply as the wife of the 20th Laird, and it was known generally that she painted and sketched, but not much more. We have a handful of her works on display in the castle, mostly forest scenes painted right here on the Drum estate, as you will have just seen in the video. What was not known, however, was that she exhibited her work on a national scale and that her artistic skill was lauded far beyond the confines of Drum Castle. I draw your attention to two letters in particular. The first, written on the 6th of March 1870, to Anna Irvine from her son, Alexander Charles Quentin Hamilton. A young man of about 20 years old at the time of writing, he laments that he doesn't have much news that week and asks, "Have you allowed your pictures to be sold?" On the same day, his younger brother, Francis Hugh, also writing to Mama, states, "I am so glad that your pictures are mentioned like that. It is a pity, however, that they are hung so high." Looking at contemporary paintings and photographs of Royal Academy exhibitions and artistic salons shows us that unlike today, where pictures in galleries are hung evenly spaced with nice, unobtrusive interpretation panels underneath, in the 19th century, pictures were hung floor to ceiling in a visually chaotic array of colour and subject matter. The best spaces were in the middle, where it was easier to see and therefore potentially make a sale or find a patron. These spaces were reserved for the established and popular artists of the day, such as Henry Raeburn, Horatio McCulloch, and Robert Gibb. Female artists, if they were exhibited at all, were relegated to the less desirable placements, in this case hung high on the wall so that visitors would not properly be able to appreciate Anna Irvine's special talent for light and perspective. Her two sons were likely referring to the 1870 Royal Scottish Academy exhibition, where she exhibited three works, Cardinal Beaton's House, The Coast of Mull, and Distant View of Loch Nagar, Aberdeenshire. Unfortunately, none of these works could be found in trust collections today. We now know this after reading these letters, and I got in touch with the Academy, who were able to go through their historic records and confirm that Anna Irvine exhibited not just in 1870, but 10 times from the mid-1850s up until the late 1870s. Up until now, this information had been lost to castle staff. The investigation didn't stop there, however. As Anna Irvine was born, lived, and died in Aberdeenshire, she would likely have been involved in Aberdeen high society through her art and family connections. I went to the Aberdeen Central Library to consult their records and see what could be found. With the help of volunteer Catherine, we spent a bleak Aberdonian February afternoon scouring through exhibition catalogues and the Aberdeen Artists Society pamphlets for evidence of Anna Irvine's artistic legacy. Happily, we found that she did indeed exhibit her work, again on a number of occasions, from 1877 to the late 1880s. Once again, it appears that none of these works, including the fascinatingly titled View over the Tombs of Cairo, have made their way into the hands of the National Trust for Scotland. Interestingly, the names of these works also provide evidence for how well travelled she and her husband were. Thanks to the sketchbook, we know that she travelled extensively around Scotland and Wales, and even as far as Italy. But this is the first time a location in Northern Africa was seen as one of her artistic subjects. It was so exciting to find proof that Anna Irvine had exhibited her works, and at such a prestigious artistic institution, ones that are still around today. 2026 will mark the bicentenary celebrations of the Royal Scottish Academy, and I'm currently in talks with them about Drumcastle's participation in this important project as a partner institution. It wasn't easy in the 19th century for women to have their art exhibited or even considered alongside the work of their male counterparts. Writing for the Royal Academy of Arts, Amy Blewett reminds us that the very idea of a woman as an artist was hotly debated by art critics in a number of artistic journals at the time. Women's place in society was still perceived as passive and their behaviour governed by emotion. John Ruskin, one of the most well-regarded art critics of the Victorian era, states bluntly in his Academy Notes of 1875 that I have always said that no woman could paint. And in earlier correspondence with another female artist, he used the term paintress to describe her, as, to his view, there never having been a lady who could paint. I didn't particularly set out to tell a feminist story about the struggle for recognition and the obstacles, both overt and covert, to making and exhibiting art as a woman in the 19th century. But I feel this issue is inextricably linked with the fact that Anna Irvine's legacy was essentially forgotten for over 100 years. By contrast, the traditional artist of the castle, Hugh Irvine, Anna's uncle-in-law, only exhibited a handful of times and spent much of his life abroad, and yet there is no question as to his enduring legacy and impact upon Drum Castle. Just look above the fireplace in the library and you will see what I mean. But the exhibition is not just about pictures. It is also about the objects that belong to and were important to Anna. Of particular interest is the matching set of paint box, tea caddy, and sewing workbox, all in lacquer and painted with East Asian motifs. All three objects are original to the castle, as in they were gifted along with the majority of the furniture and paintings you see today, when the castle came into the care of the National Trust for Scotland in 1975. Either by design or accident of history, they have never been displayed together as a matching set, and it appears that the connection between these objects was lost. The paint box normally lives in the Irvine room, a family history room dedicated to all things Clan Irvine. The sewing workbox normally sits beside the sofa in the drawing room, as if Anna has just risen from her work and stepped out of the room. The tea caddy was similarly placed next to the fireplace and a big wingback armchair in the small green closet, an intimate personal space appropriate for such a prestigious object. By bringing these three boxes together for the first time, we can fully appreciate the rich black lacquer and intricate gold detail. Despite their beauty, closer inspection reveals that they are an imitation of the more desirable Japanese lacquer made for the export market somewhere like Hong Kong. This is supported by the fact that Anna Irvine and her husband travelled extensively, and it is highly likely that they made it as far as East Asia. For me, it was especially rewarding to be able to get to know these objects up close as I prepared them for the exhibition. The paint box has a small drawer underneath the paints in which I found several original bamboo-handled brushes, perhaps used by the artist herself. The workbox still has ivory spools inside, and the pincushions show signs of frequent use. The tea caddy, once opened, reveals how the lacquer would have looked when it was first produced, not having been exposed to damaging UV rays for the past 150 years. The rich black is almost like a mirror, and being able to discover the hidden secrets of these objects is one of the great pleasures of my work. An unexpected byproduct of this exhibition research is being able to identify more artworks, objects, and books that belong to Anna Irvine. After spending so much time closely examining her painterly style and distinctive angular handwriting, I was able to identify another picture in the castle, likely being one of hers. Executed in an almost monochromatic palette, this work depicts the old wood of Drum, just to the northwest of the castle. The trees cast long shadows, and there are a couple of small deer hidden in the undergrowth. She uses bold flashes of white at the tips of the grass to suggest the last of the sunlight breaking through the clouds. She is signed off on the bottom left-hand corner with the date 11th of August 1853, but alas, not her name. There is no definitive evidence from the archives that Anna sold her work after exhibiting in Edinburgh or Aberdeen, but clearly this was a potential outcome, as her son Alexander Charles Quentin Hamilton asks in his letter, "Have you allowed your pictures to be sold?" I can also say with some certainty that the brightly coloured key to the family crests on the ceiling of the library was created by Anna. The handwriting and use of watercolours is a dead giveaway, and the same motif can be found in one of her sketchbooks. Anna was clearly interested in the notions of family heritage and lineage, as she kept visitor books for friends and family to sign when they came to Drum Tower, as she called it. She even had her sons sign in when they came back home after visiting from boarding school. The book had always been kept safe in the Irvine family room, along with other Clan Irvine ephemera, but understanding the person behind the book and her likely motivations for keeping it help us to illuminate other stories in the castle beyond that of the laird and his estate business. I will now pass over briefly to my colleague Marianne Fossaluzza for the reasoning and process behind making the short film you saw at the beginning of this talk.
I almost forgot to unmute myself. So thank you very much. And I want to continue by saying that it is this intent of revealing Anna Irvine's story that led to the realization of the short video we showed you at the beginning of this little talk. Now, technically, the SSAH is partly responsible for its creation, as the idea of filming was floated after we realized in discussion with Claire that a courageous tour of the castle and exhibition would not quite be feasible. So I must admit, I'm the one who pushed for it, not only because, let's be honest, I had just created a video studio and it would look really good on our front page, but mostly because I have had a special relationship with Anna Irvine since even before I started officially working in Drum Castle. So before becoming a guide in Drum, I worked as an inventory officer in the Reveal project team. Reveal being a nationwide collection inventory project that the Trust conducted between 2017 and 2019. So in April 2019, the Trust partnered with the Glasgow Women's Library for the event Revealing Scotland's Women, where we showcased the overlooked stories of the women we discovered during the inventory process. Now, it is the first time I talked about Anna Forbes-Irvine, not knowing that just under 2 years later, I would start waxing lyrical about her every time I took a tour around. Now, a very short article came out of this presentation on the Trust website, and to my eternal shame, I did make a mistake in it. I stated that the castle hosts 2 paintings of Anna's uncle-in-law Hugh Irvine, when there are actually 3. Now, I am delighted that from these humble beginnings, we now got to the point of having a dedicated exhibition and short film on her achievements. I wrote the script in partnership with Caitlin, and I was very happy to have the opportunity to leave the 4 walls of the exhibition room to include the works that are still scattered around the castle. The aim was to present a holistic depiction of Anna, not only focusing on her painted works, but also including drawing, needlework, and her involvement in protecting and restoring architecture. Now, it is too easy to fall into the traps of reducing an artist to a single aspect of their practice. Recording the footage for the video was quite the challenge. Not only was there only 2 of us, with Caitlin occasionally giving us a hand, but the castle proved very uncooperative. As many of you know or will have noticed, castles can be very dark places, and the contrast between dark interiors and bright windows made it challenging to obtain images with a consistent quality. The glass panes protecting the artworks also proved to be a nightmare in terms of reflections, and we had to deploy treasures of ingenuity, as well as very wide Tyvek sheets, the white sheet you can see us both holding there, to make sure that neither the camera nor the operators could be seen on the reflection of the glass, or actually the mirror-like surface of the lacquerware boxes. Now, it is these technical issues that forced us to relinquish the addition of some of the artworks that are hung in areas we simply could not work with. Such was the case, for example, of the map of Scotland that Anna Irvine embroidered in an impressive display of skills. It only makes a tiny appearance in the video. I had actually written a whole section about it, suggesting that some of her personality could be picked up from the, I reckoned, humorous naming choices she made. Indeed, if you have a closer look at the image in the center there, you might notice that both Ireland and England are only partially represented. But while she wrote Ireland for one, she wrote part of England for the other. And I was sternly told that I was the only one finding this funny. Now, equally, one of my favorite works of hers that is displayed in the library was simply impossible to capture properly. It is a drawing of the library that she made in 1847. She would have been only 19 at the time and not yet married to Alexander Irvine. So it's at the time that the library would only just have been refurbished. I feel that the almost monochrome sketch with only small highlights in white is an early yet still masterful example of how Anna Irvine was able to instill a quiet and intimate, almost contemplative atmosphere in most of her interior pieces. Now, despite these difficult and sometimes humbling choices and the constraints of time, I am still happy that we were able to produce this short piece, and I genuinely hope that it will contribute in bringing awareness of Anna Forbes-Irvine's legacy. If I ever have the chance to revisit it, though, I would, of course, include all of the material that had to be cut. But also, I would place side by side her artworks with the views of the estate and castle as they are today. Either, woodland scenes or grand buildings. And I will hand it back to you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for your perspective. I can make my slides work again. There we go. Anna's deep preoccupation with the Scottish countryside and equally its castles and ruins are a recurring theme in her work. She regularly executed studies out on the estate, as Marianne was just telling us about, and in the old wood of Drum, which were then worked up using watercolour and ink later on. Looking back from this point in history, it is easy to see the influence of artists such as John Constable, who pioneered the idea of painting on the spot in Britain some 30 or so years before Anna began exploring light and colour in this way. Impressionism was just starting to make waves in France in the 1870s and 80s as Anna's own style was evolving. It is not outside the realm of possibility that she would have seen and been influenced by this new style of painting when on her numerous trips to the continent with her husband in the mid to late 19th century. There can be no doubt that when we look a little deeper, Anna Irvine's influence on Drum Castle can still be felt today. She oversaw the restoration of the family chapel, contributed to important architectural studies of Drum and neighbouring castles, and her artwork, still hanging in the castle today, would have been seen by the best and brightest artistically minded people in 19th century Scotland. Her lifelong passion for the northeast's castles, forests, and rugged coastline shines through in her artistic output, defiantly against a society that consistently devalued women as artists. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again for such a fantastic presentation. It's been a real pleasure to find out about Anna Irvine, and we wish you all the very best at Drum Castle. Please keep in touch, and thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.